One of the core values we have at New Wine is we want our church to be the type of church that follows Jesus. And although that is an in vogue saying to describe our faith or whether or not we are Christians, it's something that people widely do not adhere to. Following Jesus means that we follow him and that we do the things that he does and copy him in a sense. After an argument, Jesus told his followers that if anyone wants to continue to follow him, that they have to turn from their selfish ways, take up their cross, and follow him. And what that means is that people have to lay down their agenda in order to follow Jesus. Follow him because he was all about God's agenda. God's agenda for Jesus was the cross. And Jesus tells his disciples that they have to take up their cross, God's agenda for their life. Another person in the New Testament talks about the same thing. The Apostle Paul says in the book of Romans in chapter 12 that the only reasonable way to worship God is by offering yourself as a living sacrifice. And then he says, don't conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Offer yourself as a sacrifice. Stop doing what everybody else does and having the same strivings that they have, the same attitude towards life that they do, and let God renew your mind. The next part of it says, then you'll be able to know God's good, perfect, and pleasing will. When I was young, my parents raised me in such a way that I could eat whatever I want, whenever I wanted. And you would think that that allowed me to venture out and try new things, but it did the exact opposite. It made me kind of stuck on my favorite things. And so whenever I wanted to eat hamburgers, I ate hamburgers. When I wanted hot dogs, I had hot dogs. When I wanted pizza, I had pizza. But I never really ventured out into new things. I just thought that I wouldn't like them because I thought I knew what I liked. When I met my wife, I was forced to meet a whole bunch of other people to kind of get their approval about me before we could get married. And I went over to her house one day, and her brother was making guacamole. And I, my whole life, had convinced myself that I would never like guacamole. In fact, it looked like baby poop. So I went over there, and her brother was making guacamole, and it was the first time that I was going to meet him. And he took a big chip of it, and he stuck it in my face, and he said, yo, you have to try this, you'll really like it. And I was caught in this intersection of choices that I had to make. Do I eat the guacamole and stomach it and throw it up later or something, or do I just tell him, hey, I'm not into guacamole? And because I really love my wife and because I really wanted our relationship to go forward and for her family to like me, I did what I never thought I could do, and I took a bite of this green substance called guacamole. But right after I had taken the bite, I realized something for the very first time, that I love guacamole, that it's my favorite thing in the whole world, that I want it on everything. You know, I think that sometimes we do the same thing with God. We think that what he's calling us to when he asks us to lay down our agenda and to take up his for our life, we think that it's going to be terrible. We think that it's going to be boring. We think that it's going to be too hard and we're not going to be able to do it. But it's quite the contrary. When we turn from our selfish ways and our destructive way of doing things, we find that God's will is good, perfect, and pleasing, that it's exactly what we've been looking for.